Hello and welcome to Comic Book Bliss. My name is Alex Duval and My name is Alex Duval and this is Charlie, and today we will be discussing Jimmy Olsen #1. Now, I've structured this series along the same lines of Tamara Chambers' show on Channel Awesome called Tamara's Never Seen. She makes notes about the movies, I make notes about the comics, and I will also show you a full screen image of the panel that I'm talking about. So, Jimmy Olsen #1. My first note on this is the boy of 100 faces who never changes his face. He never does. The cover shows him trying on a mustache. There's a wig on the wall. It looks like girl's hair. Although I don't think he cross-dresses until the 60s. This is 1954. He never puts on makeup to cover up his freckles. He never puts on glasses, which are largely symbolic, I believe, but I will be talking about that in the first episode of Issues with the Issues. Now, he never even bothers to cover his distinctive flaming red hair. And the crooks just don't know that the ice cream salesman and the bottle brush salesman are the same guy. Just don't recognize him, even though they were suspicious of the ice cream man. And later on, in another story, it is established that he has a Superman wig. You know, let's hope the crooks don't look at the back of his head. It also says that he is famous as Superman's pal. If I were a crook, I would kill Superman's pal and dump his body in the bay, so that Superman's too busy looking for his friend while I can get away with everything. The next story is called The Case of the Lumberjack Jinx. My first note on it is, did someone just die on the first page? They said poor Mac got it this time. And Mac just died. And yet there is no funeral for him. We don't hear from his families. Nobody misses Mac. And then the boy of 100 faces has a very creepy face on page 2, panel 3. He looks so psychotic. Next note is about the fact that the comic book dialogue writer lied to us. Jimmy says Burden was also around when the chain broke. Burden was not around when the chain broke. They were trying to cover up a plot hole. They were literally trying to rewrite history. So way to gaslight us, Jimmy. So then Jimmy's yelling at the crook, and he's like, "You just tried to kill me, come back!" I love how all of these crooks are just such wimps. These are professional thugs. They're probably the muscle for some mafia guy, and they just get beaten up by an 18-year-old boy. It's just this pure Hardy Boys or other adventure stories of that era. It's just this pure little boy's fantasy of, yeah, I can beat up crooks, or I and a friend can just beat up crooks. And it's just, no, little boy, no. You need help from the cops. Jimmy isn't built like a linebacker. Shot put at the most. He's not going to beat up some professional thieves. And then he knocks a lumberjack out. On the side of justice, your muscles get bigger. And I realized while rereading this story that I love Jimmy Olsen because, at least in the earlier issues, he is Encyclopedia Brown with Silver Age Superman thrown in. That's just a wonderful combination of these two things I love, these little mysteries, and also, silly Silver Age superheroes. So the story ends with Clark Kent telling his boss that he was taking it easy on company time. And the third and final story is called The Man of Steel's Substitute. Now, as every true Jimmy Olsen fan knows, Jimmy has an extensive collection of what he calls his Superman souvenirs. Superman brings him little trinkets and little gifts from all over the galaxy. Even when he is fighting evil, he is always thinking of Jimmy. And Jimmy is always thinking of Superman, because he has a shrine to Superman that is taking over his apartment, quite frankly. He even has a life-size statue of Superman to keep him company when Superman isn't around. If that's not love, I don't know what is. Superman is a very busy Superman, and one of the tasks that he is asked to do is mind a cranky baby. Another one is to save a treed dog. Now what I want to know is, how did the dog get in the tree? I want to read that story. My theory is that it is an early version of Krypto the Superdog, who first appeared in Adventure Comics number 210 in March 1955. This is Jimmy Olsen number 1 in October 1954. My theory is that Krypto had come to Earth and was trying to contact Superman via being rescued. And can we talk about the fact that the Superdog, Krypto the Superdog, appears 4 years before Supergirl? They made a dog super before they made a girl super. Now that's messed up. And like I said, Jimmy has a Superman wig, obviously, but he doesn't actually use it when it could have come in handy in the first story against the Crooks. This tells me that there were different writers assigned to different stories, and they did not collaborate. And then all of the construction workers don't hear a giant steel girder falling on them. I would think that would be pretty noisy with all of the creaking and the shearing. And Superman is a better master of disguise than Jimmy. He even somehow changes his face. And there's a very sweet homoerotic hug to end the comic book. But before we end our review, I want to draw your attention to this advertisement telling kids how to avoid polio. I would encourage you to pause the video and actually read it for a few seconds, because it's pretty interesting. I didn't expect to get educated when reading this comic book. Most of the advice about how to avoid polio actually reminds me of the duck and cover routine that kids were taught in the 50s in case the Russians decided to nuke us all. And these drills were completely useless against nuclear fallout and, well, nuclear bombs. but they did give kids a sense of control in a world that was quickly going out of control. And it makes me wonder if the people who wrote this advertisement actually believed that these things helped prevent the spread of polio, or if they were just trying to make children and their parents feel better. The only piece of advice that I would think would be actually effective is to avoid new groups or new people. But the problem is, number one, how do you ever do that completely? It's literally impossible. Even if you are homeschooled, your parents would come into contact with new people. And also, the phrase avoid new groups is pretty interesting as well. It makes me wonder why they said avoid new groups rather than new people. And also, this comic was published in 1954. How does the advice to children to avoid new groups, what effect would that have a few years later when they were racially integrating the schools? It also makes me wonder if the words avoid new groups was actually code for avoid people who are not white or who are not like you. But in more uplifting news, another fun fact that I learned elsewhere about polio is that the inventor of the vaccine, Jonas Salk, refused to patent his invention because he wanted others to be able to copy it so that more children could be saved. So that was Jimmy Olsen #1. I am a huge fan of this series, and I just love Jimmy Olsen as a character, and I cannot wait to review #2. Before I go, I like to make people feel good. So always remember, you are perfect just the way you are, and whoever you are, your best self is your true self. I will see you next time on Comic Book Bliss and on another show I am planning, Issues with the Issues, where we dive into the deeper meanings behind shallow comics. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you later.